elections are taking place this week once again, the fourth election within 2 years. So we would like to take this opportunity to speak about some of the burning issues, especially in the religious sphere within Israel. And joining us now is Orthodox Rabbi Seth Farber, the head and founder of the Etim organization. Hello and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I know Jewish advocacy is so very important, here in Israel. Being, an American, also Israeli and Orthodox rabbi, you're dealing a lot with these issues firsthand. Explain where the work is in having more of a sense of Jewish identity within the Israeli population.
Well, Israel is 73 years young, and we have a lot to grow in terms of making Jewish life accessible to Jews who live here and Jews around the world. Really, Israel is the center of the Jewish universe right now. But over the course of the legal history of the state of Israel, a lot of the laws have been kind of pigeonholed into giving a monopoly to a very, very thin slice of the Jewish world. And the ultra-Orthodox community that really holds the monopoly over Jewish life in Israel, they don't see the full picture. They don't see the full Jewish narrative. A lot of what Etim does is advocate for people, Jews around the world, and particularly Jews in Israel who aren't ultra-Orthodox, who want to do the Jewish thing.
Right.
They want to get married Jewishly. They want to be buried Jewishly. They want to be divorced Jewishly. Many of them want to convert Orthodox, but they encounter huge obstacles with the religious establishment in Israel. The religious establishment in Israel, unlike North America, is a government-based organization. It's all from the top down. And because of that, there's a lot of sense of disenfranchisement, alienation. People feel that they want to live Jewish lives, but they're not able to do it because of the government restrictions.
Right.
And what Etim does really is change all that. We do it on the systemic level by working within Israel's parliament, the Knesset. We do it in the courts. And we also do it on a case-by-case basis. We have a hotline that handles more than 5,000 calls a year of people who basically are stuck in Jewish life, and we can fish them out.
I mean, it's especially so important because it becomes in this dividing factor. You're either Jewish or you're either Orthodox or you're not. And there is so much in between that it's almost like there are barriers to entry as we're getting into like the next generation, even myself, in getting remarried in Israel. I'm already here.
So it's really
proving that I'm Jewish. It's like a scary thought that's going to make people say, forget it, I'm just going to go to Cyprus. And I imagine from a Jewish perspective, that's not a good outcome if that's what's going to happen in the next generation.
Well, I think that Israel is this moment of the ingathering of the exiles. It's a place where really Jewish life ought to be celebrated for all Jews across the spectrum, whether they identify as Orthodox or they don't identify as Orthodox. I, as an Orthodox rabbi, I'm actually a member of the very rabbinate that sometimes I engage in fighting with. I have a license to perform weddings here in Israel. And I believe the kind of Orthodoxy I believe in and the kind of Jewish law I believe in is one that's embracing, that's encompassing, that allows, that enfranchises people, that lets people live Jewish lives. And unfortunately, more and more people are feeling disenfranchised from the very Jewish tradition that they feel so part of. Which goes
against everything
that I believe in, for sure.
Right, exactly, and that Judaism is founded on. So let's talk about, this is a big step about, a court decision allowing non-Orthodox conversions. I imagine that is a very big deal. How did that happen, and what was your involvement?
So the truth is this case has been going on for many, many years, almost 15 years. It's a challenge for the state of Israel to understand exactly how to deal with conversions to Judaism that aren't done within the Orthodox community, or even more accurately, within the rabbinate itself. What's happened over the last 15 years is that the Reform and conservative communities that aren't recognized officially here have kind of followed a path that has tried to accomplish or achieve recognition here. And the way they've done that is by dealing with non-religious issues. And it's critical for me to emphasize that this Supreme Court decision has no implications for the religious dimensions of Jewish life in Israel. It has to do with a law called the Law of Return that enables people to emigrate to Israel and get citizenship. The law enables people who converted within a recognized community, in quotes, a recognized community, to get citizenship. And what this law did, and it really affects a very, very small amount of people, it allows people who converted in Reform and conservative communities here in Israel to apply for citizenship and attain citizenship as well. But it kind of let the cat out of the bag in a certain sense. It allows for this discussion that I think is so divisive, and it doesn't have to be that way. It allowed for a discussion where the Orthodox, again, see the opportunity that the Reform and conservative communities are gaining ground, so to speak, and they'll attack. And they're even talking now about post-election, one of the issues that's coming up in the election. Actually, the election has become a referendum to a certain extent on the kind of orthodoxy that's very dismissive that says you have no place here, we'd rather not have Reform and Orthodox conservative Jews here, or a different type of Judaism, one that says we can, through consensus, through talking things out, we can actually work towards compromise.
How do we extricate this debate from, you know, what becomes then, you know, the election and getting a coalition and the religious parties and all of this stuff, which is very hard to understand, you know, if you're not, you know, born and raised in Israel.
Right now, there is no party. There's almost 20 parties running for the Knesset, probably 7 or 8 that are serious contenders. None of them will get a majority, and that requires coalition building. Coalition building, and particularly elections that work towards coalition building, are incredibly divisive moments, and everybody has to choose sides, and everybody has to stand on their back feet, and it creates a lot of enmity in this country. And the fact that we haven't had a stable coalition in more than 2 years, and again, the blame can be laid across the board. It doesn't really make a difference who you are. That has just created or added fuel to the fire in terms of this internal debate about what the destiny of the state of Israel is and what kind of Jewish peoplehood we want. I'm a big believer that the ultra-Orthodox take more than their bite out of the pie, whereas they represent 16 or 17 seats in each Knesset, but their demands are often disproportionate to the amount of seats they have in the parliament. And I think what's happening right now is that there's basically everybody's choosing sides. Right now, the present Prime Minister, Netanyahu, has decided to kind of cast his lot with the ultra-Orthodox. That's very convenient for him. I think for the long-term future of the state of Israel, I think if the coalition was wider and as more and more parties were joined, that would lessen the influence and the power of the ultra-Orthodox. I don't think, again, I feel they're fully part of the Jewish people. We don't have to dismiss them. We don't have to reject them. We don't have to neutralize them. What we have to do instead is make them understand that they need to be part of a broader phenomenon.
And that we're living in now. We're not living in the past anymore.
Correct.
Right.
And we have to build a future together.
Correct.
It's not a future that it's very limited in
And this also
scope.
affects our public image outside of Israel as well.
It doesn't just affect our image across the world in the Jewish community. It affects our image around the world at a time when Iran is threatening us again, at a time where there's a possibility of the Abraham Accords to really take off and change not just Israel, but the Middle East. This is an opportunity not to allow our internal differences, and we have them, and they're legitimate. It's not a time to allow them to rip us apart. Instead,
to get in the way of progress.
Exactly. There's an opportunity for progress here. These elections, a lot of people are pessimistic. I can't say I'm completely optimistic, but in general, I live my life as an Orthodox rabbi, as an optimist, and particularly when you're a Jewish advocate and fighting every day for literally thousands of people's rights to live as Jews in Israel, to have full Jewish rights in Israel. And that's what E-Team does. So I feel the elections provide an opportunity again, not just to think about our destiny, but also to make it a reality.
Wow. Rabbi, thank you so much for this very, very interesting conversation. I look forward to inviting you back to discuss future topics. Thanks again.